Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Mohammed wa ahli bayti at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Dear sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this segment of the inspirational third annual Imam Ali Conference, hosted under the leadership of Sayyid JawadQazwini and the amazing team. Particularly, I mentioned Sayyid Hajjah Qazwini and everybody working hard to put this together in partnership with Nasimco and Ahlul Bayt TV. This segment is entitled Setting Boundaries in Your Relationships. My name is Hajj Reza Nekumanesh, and among the many organizations which I am honored to serve, I highlight here the work as Vice President of the Shia Muslim Council of Southern California. Sisters and brothers, we have all read the verse of the Holy Quran in chapter 3, verse 21, in which Allah tells us that among his signs is this, that he created for you mates from among yourselves, that you may dwell in tranquility with them, and he has put love and mercy in your hearts. Verily, in that are signs for those who reflect. And we've all heard the many ahadith that exist, particularly this one where the Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells Imam Ali alayhi salam, "O Ali, God will record in the book of martyrs the name of whoever serves his family at his home and does not disdain it. And God will establish a reward of 1,000 martyrs for each day and night, and will grant him the reward of a pilgrimage to the holy house of God for every step that he takes in this regard." Throughout the Holy Quran and in the traditions of Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, we find verse after verse after verse about how we need to treat our families and our loved ones, and tells us of the boundaries set up by Allah to protect the rights, the well-being, the honor, and the dignity of every member of any relationship. Additionally, unfortunately, we know the nature of many humans and the state of humanity. And that is why we need these continuous reminders. And that is why I am proud to be joined by two amazing individuals, scholars, to work through what it means to set, keep, and protect the boundaries which were set up by God to ensure the healthiest relationship possible. Neither of these two leaders require an introduction. You all know who they are, but I am pleased to do so. I am first honored to introduce Hajjah Najah Bazzy. Hajjah Najah is an internationally recognized healer, humanitarian, interfaith leader, and founder of Zaman International, the nonprofit organization near Detroit, which empowers marginalized women and children to break the cycle of poverty and has helped more than 3 million people in 20 countries. Since 2010, she has been recognized worldwide, including as one of the top 6 Muslim female thought leaders by Global Women magazine in 2022, in People's Magazine Women Changing the World in 2020, and as 2019's top 10 CNN heroes. She and her family also appeared in the PBS film Mohammed, Legacy of the Prophet, which was viewed by 15 million people when it premiered in the US and has since been seen by hundreds of millions worldwide. We welcome you, Sister Hajjah Najah Bazzy.
Thank you so much.
Secondly, I'm honored to introduce Sheikh Nuru Mohammed, whom we all know through his extensive travels, speaking to our communities and leading us. After serving as the resident alim in South Africa for 9 years and then Kenya for 4 years, Sheikh Nuru moved to the UK, where since 2016, he's been serving as the resident alim at the Hajjah Shia Ithna Ashari Muslim community in Birmingham. Among his many accolades, he was voted the most impactful Imam of the Year in 2021 in the UK. He's a former Lady Khadija Visiting Fellow at Cambridge University. He's a qualified civil and commercial mediator. He's the co-chair of Birmingham Citizens UK and elected Citizens UK National Trustee. He's the head of Islamic Cultural and Religious Affairs at the Council of the European Jamaat, co-chair of Mental Health Subcommittee, and so much more. So we welcome you, Sheikh Nuru, to this esteemed panel.
Thank you, Hajjah Reza. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sheikh Nuru, let's begin with you. Let's just begin by looking, like, maybe you offer us a glimpse of how Allah, through our faith, sets up boundaries for us to develop healthy and dignified relationships.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى أهل بيته الغر الميامين المنتجبين. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.
Alaikum assalam.
It is indeed a great pleasure and honor to join these two wonderful personalities to discuss this very important topic, very important subject, which touches each and every one of us, regardless of our circumstances and regardless of our backgrounds. Setting boundaries in our relationships. My dear brothers and sisters, as we know very well, Islam is a holistic way of life, in the sense that it always provides us with general guidelines on how to live our lives, be it in social sphere or intellectual sphere or economical sphere, and so on. Now, central or key to the teachings and practices of Islam is that social sphere or social dimension of Islam. It is of great importance to the extent that our beloved prophets, through the teachings of Almighty Allah, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, highlight on the essence of the act of worship we undertake daily, annually, and monthly, and that it is to bring the beauty and the qualities in our behaviors and interactions with one another. For example, when you look at the essence of our daily prayers, salah, you realize that the Holy Quran makes it crystal clear. Inna salata tanha anil fakhsha'i wal munkar. In a very simple term, the essence and the secret of salat is to ensure that we behave in the best possible way. Likewise, look at the secret and the essence of fasting in the holy month of Ramadan, or even the secret and the essence of undertaking Hajj. And so therefore, social dimension is central and key to the mission of our beloved Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Now, to appreciate that social dimension, we need to be able to set very important boundaries. These boundaries will help us in one way or the other to build solid and healthy relationships. But at the same time, from the Islamic perspective, for I and you to be able to set those boundaries, we need to appreciate our rights. We need to appreciate the right of each other. In other words, setting boundaries depends on appreciating the rights that the Holy Quran and the traditions of our beloved Prophet and Ahlul Bayt set for us. That is why when you go to the teachings of Quran and the traditions of our beloved Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, you will come across so many places highlighting on the importance of rights. For example, rights of our children. Because it is only when I, as a father or mother, appreciate the right of my children, I'm able to set those boundaries in order to be able to build that solid and healthy relationship. Typical example, you look at the tradition of our beloved fourth Imam, the fourth divine leader, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. He makes it crystal clear that our children are our extension in the goodness of this world and otherwise. This is inviting us to appreciate the right of our children so that we are able to set those boundaries. Another example, You go to glorious Quran and the teachings of our beloved prophets. These two great texts invite us to appreciate the rights of our parents. So many verses of the Holy Quran tells us to do so. One beautiful tradition tells us heaven is under the feet of our moms. It's inviting us to appreciate their rights. Another tradition tells us Father is in the middle of the door or the gate of heaven. It's inviting us to appreciate the rights of our fathers. Likewise, the rights of our siblings. Quran makes it crystal clear that you fulfill those rights intentionally, you become accursed or cursed in the sight of Almighty Allah, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And in conclusion, you realize that Islam also tells us not only those people we have blood relationship with have right over us, even those we do not share faith with also have rights over us, and we have rights over them. And in that beautiful tradition of our beloved first Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, tells us that people are of two kinds, either your brother in faith or your equals in humanity. And of course, we cannot forget the teachings of the Holy Quran, and Hajjah quoted that verse earlier on when it comes to the rights between husband and wife. And the Holy Prophet said, sitting next to your family is so dear to Allah than making itikaf in my mosque in the holy city of Medina.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Thank you, Sheikh. Now you have led us in a beautiful way, just inspired by everything that you said. Hajjah Najah, my first question for you is, taking these concepts, these abstracts, these ideas, practically, as we live them out today, what do these boundaries look like?
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so very much. It's an honor to be with Sheikhna and to be with you, Hajjah. Thank you so very much, Hajjah, for moderating, and to the Imam Ali Conference and all who've organized it. You know, I think for me, it comes down to observing what is organized in the universe and the concept of ownership. And building off of what Sheikhna has just, you know, very inspirationally spoken about, you know, this idea of, and it's become very popular these days, the idea of being bounded and having boundaries and what it means to have boundaries. And, you know, it's almost become, you know, a contemporary word that's used very often, especially through the younger generations, become part of the lexicon of our dialect right now. I think it is really important that we understand what it means to be bounded and to have these types of boundaries. What does it mean for us as a people, as a person? So when I think about what that means, I don't necessarily think about it in the psychological sense of the way that we are hearing it. I think about it in the spiritual sense, that God has organized this incredible universe and that he has placed boundaries throughout as an intentional way to help us live. The sun knows exactly when to rise. The wind knows exactly how to conduct itself. Waves know their conduction system. Everything has a system and everything has a boundary. And so even in the Quran, when we talk about, you know, the salt water and the sweet water, there is a barrier, there is a boundary. So when we think about faith and we think about what God is trying to teach us, he's demonstrated it already in the universe. The darkness has a boundary, the light has a boundary. So we ourselves, how do we understand this? How do we understand the psychology of what boundaries mean? I think, you know, as we continue to talk, I want to focus on the idea of ownership. If you think that you are entitled to own anything more than your nafs, yourself, you are entering into an area that can harm another. What do I mean by that? And we'll continue in the conversation. I, as a woman, am married. I have children. If I think that I own my children, or I own my spouse, or I own my parents, or I own my employees, if I feel that I am the owner of the entities and the relationships I'm working with, then I feel I have authority over them, When we feel we have authority over something, that comes with a sense of control. And if we think we can control someone, that could come with a concept of harm. So I want to stop right here to continue our conversation. I want to come back and revisit the idea of how do we understand our personal, physical, spiritual, emotional boundaries? How do we understand that in our humanness? How do we understand that in the universe? And what is expected of us to be God-minded people, God-conscious people?
MashaAllah. Thank you, Hajjah Najah. You know, I told you guys you wouldn't be unpleased with this panel. It's hard to move on. I have a couple more questions and we don't have that much time. Sheikh Nuru, is there a way that you could give us just a couple or one prophetic example or context, either positive or negative, on how Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam dealt with those either who were excellent with their families or maybe not so excellent?
Yeah, no doubt. Our beloved Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are our role models. And it's important from time to time we refer to them and take some practical lessons to better ourselves from their lives and teachings. Typical example that comes to mind is how our beloved Prophet set the boundaries when it comes to the relationship of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam and Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam. The Holy Prophet conducted this beautiful marriage through divine decree. But then he looked at Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. This is what I call setting boundaries. And he said to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, here is Fatima. She is part of me. I love Fatima. Ya Ali, do not break the heart of Fatima. Ya Ali, take care of Fatima. Reach out to Fatima. Help her, Ya Ali, and assist her in the house chores. And he said to him, Ya Ali, when you are blessed with children, assist her in raising those children. Same time, our beloved Prophet looked at Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam, and he said to her, Ali is very humble, and you are lucky to marry someone like Ali. He is the best of all. Ya Fatima, do not ask Ali what he cannot afford. Ya Fatima, assist Ali in running the family and the house. This is setting boundaries without an iota of doubt. And hence that moment when the Holy Prophet spoke to both of them and he shared whatever they're supposed to do individually to ensure that the relationship thrive. Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam is quoted to have said, I've never been happier than the way I am happy today. That is setting boundaries. And another example quickly, which Al-Kafi narrates, that 3 ladies came to our beloved Prophet complaining about their husbands. One of the complaint has something to do with our topic of discussion. One of the ladies said to the Holy Prophet, my husband, when I cook meat, he doesn't like meat. He becomes unhappy because he wants to get closer to Allah. So he stays away from meat, and I love meat. Number 2, one of them complained to the Holy Prophet that my husband doesn't like beautiful and good smell. He doesn't want. According to him, doing so will take him away from God. And then the last one said to the Holy Prophet that he doesn't like spending quality time with me. The moment the Holy Prophet heard that, he came out of his house, prepared, went to the mosque, sat on his member, and Prophet delivered a powerful sermon. And he said to all and sundry who were in the mosque at that time, I eat meat, I use beautiful smell, and I spend quality time with my family. You do not have that right to deny your wives that. This is what I call setting boundaries to thrive in a particular relationship.
Thank you, Sheikh Nuru. Very, very powerful relaying of stories. Hajjah Najah, going back to what you were talking about earlier, first of all, because of the work that you do at Zaman International, there's not many people in the world that do the work that you do dealing with traumatized people. So you must have so many experiences with those who have suffered trauma because of the lack of living within these boundaries set by Allah and our deen. Can you please tell us of your personal experience of dealing with people who might be victims of those who don't respect boundaries, or anything else you'd like to share?
Sure, of course. I mean, I wish we had, an hour to talk about these things. These things are so important. First and foremost, I want to say, for anyone who's listening that's been hurt, hurt whether you've been emotionally hurt or psychologically hurt, physically hurt, there isn't enough that we can say to you about how wrong that is. There isn't. And we certainly aren't going to do that in this particular session. But to know, at least I hope and I believe that, and I hope you do too, for those of you, especially who are victims to trauma, that whether we see the justice in this world or not, we must believe that justice does exist and that it will be enacted. Now, that doesn't necessarily, while that's a hope, doesn't necessarily help us if somebody's taking a beating or if someone's being, mentally and verbally abused. At Zaman International, it's a place where women walk through the door very broken. And oftentimes because of oppression from the men in their lives. And that's not to say by any means that all men have this tendency. I'm fortunate to be married to an incredible man and be raised by a wonderful father, and I have 3 amazing sons. But certainly permission has been given somehow culturally throughout the world where, women are subjugated. There is no doubt about this. But it's not just women. I have to tell you, I've also seen it the reverse. So what I want to talk about in this just next minute or two is I think it comes down to asking yourself, if you yourself have the tendency to flare abuse, if you're a person who flies off the handle easily, you need some help. And there's no shame in seeking help because we don't have the right to step on the natural fitra and the rights and the boundaries of a human being that God created. So if we think about those that we supposedly love, we must love as God has asked us to love. Of course, people have all kinds of psychological issues, mental health issues. They've come from trauma themselves. And because they come from trauma, there's a tendency to traumatize if that trauma is not interrupted and there's not therapeutic measures to help correct that trauma. And it could be very intergenerational. We know this. Today, in this next, minute and a half, what I do want to say is that it's not okay. If you're a person who has been abused or in an abusive relationship, no matter what that relationship is, take care of yourself. Don't be afraid to go get help. Don't be ashamed to get help. That's the boundary you need to set for yourself. You need to be able to protect yourself. And be careful about what you trust and who you trust. Go to the professionals. Go to those who are well-trained in helping you work through the victimization you may be experiencing. To those who victimize and who seem to not be able to know how to control their oppression, the way in which they oppress people. That's a deep dive into oneself. So what I'm saying is on both ends of the spectrum, whether it's a person who's abused or the abuser, these are both conditions that require They require professional help. And we know, especially through all the years and all the 40 years we've been doing this work, that when people do seek that professional help, there's a glimmer of hope. Hope is intrinsic. It's locked inside the heart of every person. But when the road is so dark, it's hard to see God. So if we can move the needle so that we have a light that just begins to open in the minds and hearts of that person, they can start to see their self-worth. Little by little by little, that person can begin to heal. We can change the dynamic of the relationship. All to say, Allah does not like the oppressor. Allah is with those who are oppressed. And we know this from our history and from our theology. But we also know that justice goes along with it. But what I'm saying is you don't have to wait till the next world, in the next world, to get that justice. Seek the professional help. Get the help that you need.
Thank you, Hajjah Najah. That's great advice to any listener who's in need. And on the line of advice, we know that a topic like this cannot be covered in a short segment. So we ask that you reach out and find the answers you need. And now we got to cut it down to like 1 or 2 sentences maximum. First of all, Sheikh Nuru, if you have advice for somebody who might be struggling, 1 or 2 sentences, what would you tell them?
Don't suffer in silence. Go out there. There are so many helps out there. Don't suffer in silence.
Thank you, Sheikh. And Hajjah Najah, same question for you.
It comes down to power and control. If someone is abusing you, no matter what that abuse is, it's because they have a deficiency and they're trying to fill that vacancy through power and control. Don't participate in their power and control. Participate in your own.
Absolutely. Well, I was very honored to be a part of this esteemed panel with these esteemed scholars. We want to thank you for joining the Imam Ali Conference, the 3rd year annually. You know, something like this doesn't just happen. You don't gather Maraja and scholars and athletes and activists and superstars without hard, determined, and committed work. May Allah bless all of those that were involved in this undertaking. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum, Hajj Reza. Do you mind making